Swinny, do you want to take this away?
Yeah, so this week, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, we've got just a boatload of details. Essentially,
Mm.
everything we would want to know about what they've changed, they've told us now. And alongside that, IGN has an awesome 10-minute video going through their hands-on experience with, big time fan of the Mass Effect series, detailing everything, which is great as well. So I just quickly wanted to cover some of the stuff that we already knew. So the game's coming out on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. There's no dedicated PS5 or Series X version. Includes all the games plus 40 DLC. Doesn't include a Pinnacle Station. Developed on Unreal Engine 3, just like the originals. It's 4K HDR, textures upscaled by AI. We know it's running on 60 frames a second on PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, and PC. Don't know if we've had confirmation yet on the base consoles. There's a shared character creator and standard default Shepherd models across all the three games now. And Mass Effect 1 is getting the most changes with essentially massively reworked visuals and entirely new HUD redesign. And there's also no multiplayer for Mass Effect 3. And there's a whole bunch of specific Mass Effect 1 details that we also knew about, like the fact that elevator sequences basically can load way quicker now and you can skip them or stay in there to listen to the flavor announcements from when you're in the elevator. Dedicated melee button, improved cover system, inventory improvements to basically bring in line with what the better PC version was like. Just a whole bunch of changes that we kind of already knew about, but this week they've actually essentially just given us the rest of it. And some of this stuff is really, really cool. And they talk about it in that IGN video. And some of the stuff is, well, we'll talk about it. So some of the big highlights from the article that they put up on the EA website is that there's a new unified launcher and universal settings for all three games, which is great. So you only have to essentially, set your controls and everything within one place, which is fantastic. There's a reworked achievement list that basically they bundle it all into the trilogy. Obviously, that means there's a lot of redundant ones across the games because there's cross-game progression. So something that might be, hey, kill 250 enemies, that's now across all three games, which is really, really good. There's also native controllers support for PC as well as 21 by 9 support for resolutions. But now we actually get into the nitty gritty and some of the stuff I was really, really wanting to hear about, which is what they've done to Mass Effect 1, specifically gameplay wise. So they've detailed a lot of stuff under what they call combat tuning. So essentially, they've reduced some of the RPG combat mechanics, specifically around accuracy penalties, to make the game play more like Mass Effect 2 and 3. As part of that, also aim down sights or ADS has been made more accurate, and there's improvements to aim assist and things like that. And also like weapon sway. So sniper rifles had a huge weapon sway in the first Mass Effect. So apparently that's been removed. So it sounds like it's just been taken out. They've rebalanced a whole bunch of abilities. All enemies take headshot damage. And a big thing that I'm glad that they've confirmed as well is that it still uses the ammo cooldown system, which means you don't pick up ammo like you do in Mass Effect 2 and 3. It's just all weapons cool down, but they cool down much faster now. So they did previously mention they're making improvements to the Mako controls, but now they've actually detailed, and apparently they're still working on a little bit, but they've massively improved the controls. The vehicle feels weightier, has a faster shield recharge, and has an additional boost to basically mean, often in Mass Effect 1, you'd get stuck trying to scale a mountain and you'd just be, oh my god, this is taking forever. So they've got a boost to really help with that and also just get around faster as well. And you don't die instantly in lava anymore, you just take damage. So that's cool. Now, there are some other changes, but I just wanted to, throw to Mike. What are your thoughts about this so far and how it's shaping up?
Yeah, really, really positive. I mean, I like the combat tuning stuff that they spoke about. The fact that he can do headshots is really, really cool.
Well, you could before, but this is to all enemies now, all enemy
Yeah.
types.
So yeah, that's what I meant. So I think that's a huge pro. I mean, in terms of the abilities rebalancing, I'm gonna wait and see how that's actually gonna play out because some of the crazy stuff you could do that from memory were almost game breaking. If they rebalance that to be a bit more fair, I think it's kind of cool, but at the same time, you might miss out on some really crazy things that you used to be able to do. And the cooldown system being faster, I remember you could make some crazy tweaks where you'd get a really high, powerful gun, and some of the mods you could put on it would basically make it overheat instantly. But if they kind of reduce stuff like that, you could get some crazy, cool, powerful weapons. So I think some of that stuff's really cool. Um, the Mako stuff, I was one of the people that actually didn't mind the Mako all that much, to
Isn't
be
it
honest.
Mako?
But Mako. But I'm a fan of improving anything like that. So it's huge positives, I think. And the actual gameplay footage that IGN had showed off was pretty cool, both graphically and also just little tweaks. And one of the things I think you're probably going to talk about next is some of the level design tweaks with the geometry and stuff, which I think is really cool. Just little, they're like more like quality of life stuff in that sense, but I think it makes a huge improvement, especially for people that only started playing the game now. And one of the biggest things I think, which was kind of I think maybe talked about earlier, but it was definitely featured in this video as well, was that really long elevator loading scene. So there's an infamous part where there's this elevator, and really the reality is the elevator wasn't there for looks. It was mostly there because they needed to load the
Well,
assets.
it's anytime
And
you're in the Citadel and jump in an elevator.
yep.
So
And they had to do that just purely from a performance perspective. Whereas now you can pretty much just press the button and you're in, because it can load it so much quicker. So I think that's going to be a really cool quality of life improvement. But at the same time, it was cool back in the day, the memes it would create, and you kind of got a little bit of relaxation as you're going up that elevator, and it introduced a bit more realism because it takes time to go up an elevator. So I don't know, we'll see how stuff like that goes, but overall super positive. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Due to the elevator stuff, has anyone ever built like a 3D model of how big the Citadel is? Because like the speed that the elevator's going, it's going to be like kilometers
I don't know
tall.
if they did.
oh well,
Well,
Citadel is gigantic.
it is
so-
gigantic.
Wow.
It is like kilometers tall, but yeah, it doesn't really maybe make sense the way the elevator actually works. But yeah.
And Swinny, apologies if I missed it. So the game's coming out May 14 this year,
Yes,
2021.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't bring that up this time, but yeah, very soon, which is
Yeah, a month away. It's
2%,
kind of
yeah.
crazy, actually.
You're looking forward to it probably almost the most into God.
Yeah,
having
yeah,
never
yeah.
really
And
played it.
you know what's really funny? Because I actually do have Mass Effect 1 and 2 on 360, and I played only parts of Mass Effect 1, so maybe 5 hours of it or so. And I actually hated the Mako, the way it drove and
Oh,
things
wow.
like that. Like, absolutely hated it. And I didn't like the combat as well. Like, I felt it to just be really clunky, and I just put the game down. Like, it's kind of annoying me, so I'll pick it up later. And then, 10 years
It's perfect
later,
how they do
I've
that,
not
yeah.
played it. So I know that for purists, and I'm sure if I played the game, well, I did play the game, but if I completed the game when it came out, I might be like, oh, I don't like these changes. But honestly, someone who's not attached to it, hearing about some of the changes they're making, the quality of life improvements, for me, it's just going to give the game way more chance of me falling in love
Being
with
played.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Well, and it's interesting because I don't know how you feel about it, Swinny, but to me, Mass Effect 1 is probably my favorite in the series and one of my favorite games of all time. So it's going to be interesting to see it change.
You-
But I think they're all improvements from what I can see, so I have no issues with it.
yeah, like we've mentioned it before when we talked about it. Mass Effect 1 is easily my favorite of the series, but I just quickly wanted to cover some of the other changes they're making before I give my thoughts around the combat tuning stuff. So we talked about the geometry. So the IGN video actually spends quite a bit of time on talking about specifically the Novaria hub and how there's this wall that they essentially put in there just to allow the game to load its assets better and stream it in. And essentially they said, well, that wall doesn't need to be in there anymore. So they're actually making some really, really good geometry changes and actually adding like just a lot more flavor to the environment with like new massive light fixtures and everything. So they've done a lot of work in the actual look of levels.
Pads on the couches. Let's not forget that
Yeah.
one. There's padded couches now, which is good. Makes sense.
So one of the things that I'm actually really, really happy about is that Shepard can now sprint out of combat, which makes just getting around, especially in the Citadel, it's going to be much better. They've taken away class-specific weapons, which is an interesting choice. I'll see whether or not I like that or not when I actually go to play this. But
when I saw that, Swinny, I thought of you. I was like, oh, Swinny's going to have an opinion on this.
So, well, yeah. Anyway, so the inventory items, this is a huge one. This is the kind of improvement I wanted them to make, and I'm so glad they did. You can essentially tag inventory items as junk and then
Nice.
bulk convert to Omnigel or bulk sell to vendors and everything. And you can also sort vendor inventories, which is great. You can now independently command squad mates, which is just fantastic. The XP progression, this is interesting, has been rebalanced. So you essentially can get to higher level and get higher level builds within your first playthrough, whereas before it would take multiple playthroughs to get to that point, and because they've removed the level cap for that first playthrough. So they've, in terms of the other games, so Mass Effect 2 and 3 haven't had as much done, but they've made Mass Effect 2, they've made a lot of the outfits look a lot better, and they've also increased the ammo drop rate, which is fantastic, because that's one of the things I didn't like much about a Mass Effect 2, is that sometimes it just felt like you're running around trying to search for this random ammo thing that you saw 3 rooms back. And specifically for people using sniper rifles, they're really, really increasing that. And with Mass Effect 3, they're not making a lot of changes to that, because it was probably the most polished visually, especially, and probably gameplay-wise when it came out. But interestingly, the Galaxy at War feature, so that's where it basically says, okay, how ready are you to tackle the Reapers? And it factors in decisions from previous games, but also all the stuff you're doing in Mass Effect 3 to a readiness meter. That meter was also previously influenced by multiplayer stuff, so obviously that stuff is no longer in there. But now they've made it so the content from the first 2 games adds to that readiness a lot more. So if you only play Mass Effect 3, you actually essentially have to do everything in the game to get that meter up. Otherwise, they've made that a lot more impactful for people playing through the trilogy. So now that we've actually got through all the details, which is a lot, which is it's great. The fact that they put this out there before the game came out is fantastic. I just wanted to talk about the combat tuning part. This is what I was concerned about as someone that loves Mass Effect 1's gameplay the most. But I am very happy to hear that they're making these changes for everyone else. I've said that before. I'm happy they're making these changes, but it's just, from reading it, it's not the kind of thing I wanted them to do. But I also haven't played the game yet. I could very much change my tune when I realize, okay, this is a better experience as, when you're playing the game. The thing for me is the fact that they're reducing things like accuracy penalties. That is kind of what it's becoming. It's essentially becoming a shooter with RPG elements as opposed to RPG with shooter elements, which...
So you mean like Mass Effect 3?
Well, 2 and 3.
And 2, yeah.
And as I said, it makes sense. It's what everyone else wants. I don't know how I feel about it yet. If I would have read this news back before they'd showed any footage, or when they first announced it, I would have been probably quite like, what the hell? Were they changing it so much? But since I've seen all the work that they've put into the rest of it, and I've kind of had time to really, I guess, not be petty about it. I understand it's for the better, because you've also always got the ability to play the original. It's not like that game's going.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the, as you said, Intergot, the class specific weapon restrictions, I don't know how I feel about that yet, because it's been a while since I played the first Mass Effect, so I don't know if that maybe that was just a minor annoyance, and it's better to actually give all classes the ability to use them.
That was a big annoyance for me, I think. I don't like games that restrict you like that. I get why some games would do it, potentially, but in a game like this, it didn't feel like there was a reason for it, if that made sense.
Well, the reason is that you've got to build, and it's an RPG, so
absolutely.
Like a lot of RPGs, builds will only be able to use certain equipment.
But I mean, what it comes down to is ultimately personal choice. If you want to still feel that you want to have a build, then you can artificially restrict yourself by just not using those weapons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without having the game force that upon you. So I never saw a reason why a game would do that. That's why, if I think about just a really quick parallel to games like why Skyrim I quite enjoyed, it's because it doesn't restrict you with anything. You build your character however you want to build, and you become proficient, and it grows in the direction you want it to, as opposed to restricting you just because you made a stupid choice at the start of the game.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think that great work that's been put into this. I really hope. They said, just in general, so one thing I didn't mention is across the trilogy, apparently they fixed a crap load of bugs, which those games, especially Mass Effect 1, were buggy as fuck. So I'm really, really, really glad that they've
They were
put
still
that time
great.
into it.
Like, you know, we say, but it wasn't buggy, like unplayable. Put this game down. This is trash. It was just mostly kind of funny. Mostly, I'll just reload that bit. It wasn't. It was really weird. It never to me. I remember playing it, and maybe because I was so engrossed in the game and visually it was so amazing that I never really felt like it was a deal breaker. The bugs in that game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, when you're hovering above the galaxy map in the Normandy for the 10th time, and you're like, "Oh, I've got to reload my save file. I hope I've saved
Yeah, okay,
recently." You know,
it may have been a little annoying.
Yeah, so I'm glad they're fixing that stuff.
It is amazing how the love for the game can really determine the fandom being on one side of the equation versus the other. Like the Skyrim side of, it's kind of funny that there's so many bugs, or the Cyberpunk side where it's like, this game is broken, it should be pulled from the store. It's kind of the same stuff, but just based on the love of it. You know, can I just say, like, so I'm definitely going to get this game. So whatever I say now, you know, it's sort of in that knowledge as well. But whenever they were showing like how the game looked to how it looks now, and when I see those type of things, I try not to look at which version they're talking about and just look at them, right? And often I found myself liking the original 360 version.
Wow.
And I found it was like more artistry of the lighting and how they did certain things than, you know, putting this kind of up-res on it and just, you know, blasting new visual effects on it. And it's like, okay, actually I like the 360 one, not the new 4K version. So, but like I said, I'm going to get this game. I don't think I'm going to get it day one, honestly, unless it comes down in price.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it?
It's too expensive for me. Like, it's coming down in price a little bit, but
I'm
I feel
gonna
like
have to get it.
it's going to go
price.
down in price later. But I'll just see how I'm placed at the time because it's only a month away. I still think I'll be playing probably Dark Souls at that time. So, but yeah, it sounds like we're all going to get this at some stage.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Is it day one for you, Swinny?
No, I think that I'll probably just wait a little bit. I might buy it, but I probably won't play it, if that makes sense.
What? You should wait and then buy it when it's cheaper.
Well, it depends. I don't know. I have to check it if there's... I know they've got the fancy special editions, but I just have to check if there's any like smaller like steelbook editions or anything like that.
There were,
I know what you
I
mean.
think, but I think they might have been sold out.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm
Let me know if you ever need those things because I'll keep an eye out for you. I always see those things pop up.
Keep an eye out for me. Because it is one of the rare things that I would be willing to get a different, you know, special edition just because I'd keep it. But see, to me, this is an interesting one because it's a game that I hold so dear to my heart that I feel I only really want to play it when I can do it justice, when my mind is cleared and when I don't have a backlog of stuff and when I don't have all these other things in my personal life and work life that I have to deal with, of which there's a lot at the moment, that if I get the game in the next few weeks, I would likely not really be able to enjoy it properly.
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to probably, for my own sake, save it to like, do you know? I mean, you know what I mean. When you're in that state of mind where you're relaxed and you can really enjoy the experience, and it can take you back properly, and you get that nostalgic kick. Otherwise, it's just going to ruin it, I think. So
yeah, there is actually. So they haven't been officially announced in Australia. There is a crazy sort of replica kit that they're releasing, like a collector's edition for the Legendary Edition.
That's the one we talked about previously, I think.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah.
shit.
So Mike went into long detail about that when we covered it last time. But anyway, that's fine. I think it's time to move on. So
yeah, no, fair enough. All right, yeah, no, looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. All right, moving on to our next story.